Smoking on cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Cooking up in the crock pot. Bad and bullshit.
Welcome back to the Hoop Stop, everybody. Today, we're going to be doing our first NFL video. We're going to be predicting the standings for next year's NFL season. Without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the AFC North, I still believe that the Ravens are going to win their division this year. But I feel like Lamar Jackson will be slowed down heavily. But their team is just so well around built and so good all around that they'll still find success. But I feel like teams start to figure out Lamar Jackson's play style and how to stop him. But that doesn't really take away from the team's success as much. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, I have them as sort of a dark horse. Now, I know a lot of people have them making the playoffs, but I feel like they'll be dominant all season just because of their defense. Even if Big Ben gets hurt, I still feel like they make the playoffs. Just because last year, Big Ben only played like 1 or 2 or 3 games. And the Steelers still almost made the playoffs with a third-string quarterback. A third string. That just shows how dominant their defense is. And I have them making the playoffs as the 5th seed, going 10-6. Next up, I have the Bengals. The Bengals, I only have going 7-9, which is actually pretty good for Joe Burrow's first year. I feel like they'll start off really slow, but their competition is really easy since they finished last place. And so later in the season, as Joe Burrow gets more starts and touches with the football, he'll develop as a player and he'll get the team more wins, leading to them being 7-9, which is a respectable win count. And in last place, I have the Cleveland Browns. I feel like this is the season where they just realize this is not going to work. Baker Mayfield's going to have another down year this year, and they're just going to completely fall apart just like last year. Now, I could be totally wrong. They have enough talent that they could easily make the playoffs, but I just don't think they go well together as it showed this year. And, I mean, I hope they prove me wrong, but I just don't think they will. I think they'll have another terrible year this year. Diving into the AFC South, I have the Colts taking this division, going 11-5. I feel like the addition of Phillip Rivers was great. And they also traded for DeForest Buckner in a trade with the San Francisco 49ers, and I really like him as a defensive player. I feel like Phillip Rivers, he may not have as much weapons as he did on the Chargers, but he has a much, and I mean much, better offensive line. And I feel like he'll thrive in that type of offense and setting, just like Jacoby Brissett did for the first half of last season. And I feel like it'll pay off when it comes to team success, as they're winning their division and being the 3rd seed in the whole AFC. Coming in at 2nd in the AFC South, I have the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson. Oh wait, no more DeAndre Hopkins. It doesn't matter. They're still making the playoffs as the 6th seed. Even though their GM and head coach, Bill O'Brien, I don't even know what he's thinking. I feel like Deshaun Watson is still that good that he's still going to carry the team on his back and take them to the playoffs. And this is going to be really hard because, as you can see last year, his O-line was horrendous. And getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins is just going to make him finding success even worse. But I feel like he's going to pull it off. And him and J.J. Watt are going to have a big up year from last year. And even though Deshaun Watson did amazing last year, I feel like he'll do even better and continue to improve as a player. Next up, I have the Tennessee Titans falling apart, or not necessarily falling apart, but becoming the 3rd seed and missing the playoffs, going 7-9. And I just feel like Ryan Tannehill isn't going to find as much success as he found last year. And Derrick Henry, I feel like he'll have a big year, but they're also there's been talks that they're going to try and do more than one running back for the Titans. As in, not just run Derrick Henry the whole game, keep swapping out every single play. And I feel like that's not going to work because Derrick Henry strives on running the ball when his opponents are tired. And that's why he always thrives in the second half of the season. which has helped the Titans to make the playoffs last year. And I don't know, it could just be me, but I just feel like they're going to have a huge down year. Coming in last place, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I believe they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence, but even if they weren't taking, I feel like they still be this bad. And, I mean, just look at their franchise. Look at their team. Coming in first in this division, I have the Buffalo Bills. I feel like the improvement at the wide receiver position with Stephon Diggs is going to help them greatly. And although they have the same record as last year, I feel like they'll still make the playoffs and they'll still be a contender to make the Super Bowl. Yeah, I said it, a contender. With that defense is one of the best defenses in the league. And just look at their division. Their division's so easy. They'll have so much team success this year, and Josh Allen will improve as a quarterback. Coming in second and third and missing the playoffs, I have the Jets and the Patriots. Now, the Jets, I don't know, I just feel like they need another year. Sam Darnold, he's going into his third year, and he's only 22. Joe Burrow's 23. That's insane. And the Patriots, they lost Tom Brady, and they have Jared Stidham as their starting quarterback. What else can I say? And in last place, the only one that I don't necessarily like is the Dolphins. Now, when I was making this, I don't know, they just felt that way. Because I was going through their wins and losses, and all of their losses felt like they should have lost. But you can definitely make an argument for some of them, and you can definitely make an argument for them winning their division. If Tua comes in and he's a star right as he comes in his rookie year, I could definitely see him making the playoffs. But I feel like one of the reasons they're going to go this low is because they're going to have Ryan Fitzpatrick start for the first half of the season. And I don't think this is a bad decision because he's a great mentor. He's going to mentor Tua perfectly. He's like literally one of the smartest players in the NFL. But when it comes to team success, I don't know if he wants to be your starting quarterback. I mean, he's better than Stidham, let's be honest. Now with the AFC West, I have the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions, taking this one. I believe they're going to have a lot more success, not on the offensive side because of how dominant the offense was last year, but on the defensive side. In the second half of the season, when the Chiefs only lost one game to the Titans, their defense was a top 3 defense in the league. And if you think I'm capping, you can look up the stats and do some research and look at where they ranked in that part of the season. Now, I believe next year, Mahomes, where I don't know if he's going to win MVP next year, but I do believe he'll be in talks of MVP. But I feel like Tyreek Hill will have an insane year next year. If you look at his stats, in the first year that Mahomes won his MVP, Tyreek Hill's yards were insane. And then the last year, Tyreek Hill only played 12 games, and he still had 850 yards. If he played all 16 games, he would have easily cracked the 1,000-yard mark. And I feel like Tyreek Hill's success will take a bunch of yards away and touchdowns away from Travis Kelce's success. So I think Travis Kelce will have a little bit of a down year, but the team success will be better than ever as they'll win 13 games. In second place and making the playoffs is the Denver Broncos. Now, if you asked yourself at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of the season, if the Broncos were going to make the playoffs next season, every single person in their right mind would have said, hell no. But if you look at their team, their wide receiver core is really good and their running back core is really good. They have Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay to shuffle in at the running back. And this year they drafted who I think is the best wide receiver in the class in Jerry Jeudy. And they have a Pro Bowler last year in Courtland Sutton. And also their quarterback in Drew Lock was the only quarterback other than Lamar Jackson to have a QBR rating of 98 in a game last year. And I feel like he'll continue to improve as he gets more touches and reps in. And they'll make the playoffs as a 7th seed. But I don't think they'll make any noise in the playoffs, as I believe in a couple of years they'll be really good in competing with the Chiefs. In third and fourth place, I have the Chargers and the Raiders. Now, for the Chargers, I have them coming in third place just because I just don't think their team has what it takes. They lost Phillip Rivers, and their new starting quarterback for most of the season is going to be Tyrod Taylor. Now, I know Tyrod Taylor has gotten wins in the past, but I feel like it's different this time as they have to go up against the Chiefs, the Broncos, and other competition that they have to play against in their schedule. And when Justin Herbert comes in, I feel like he'll have a hard time finding success this year just because of how bad their O-line is. And although they have great weapons, I don't know. I just have them coming in third place and only getting 6 wins. Now with the Raiders, I have the Raiders coming in last place just because they're so young and this is their first time in their new city. So I don't think they'll find any success this year. But their team is talented with Henry Ruggs, who I feel like could be a mini version of Tyreek Hill. I believe they could win a lot of games in the future, but they need to figure out their quarterback situation, as I don't think Derek Carr is going to cut it, or Marcus Mariota, who, let's just put this into perspective. The Titans had to trade for a backup on the Dolphins to start over Marcus Mariota, who was doing that bad with the Titans that year. For the NFC division, North, I have the Packers taking it. And I don't have the Packers being as successful as last year, as because in the draft, I feel like they needed to take some more weapons. Aaron Rodgers has had his whole career with the Packers and has done everything he can with the Packers without having any weapons drafted in the draft in the first round. The only weapon he's had is Devontae Adams, who's been really nice for him, but you can't win football games with one target. And it goes to show this season when I think they'll have a little bit of a down year. And their defense won't be as good as last year, but they'll still be decent. And that goes to show when they win their division, but they don't have as much success as last year, but they may make some splashes in the playoffs. Next up, in second place, I have the Vikings barely making the playoffs with a record of 10-6. They lost a bunch of defensive assets, and they lost Stephon Diggs, which I feel like will hurt them greatly. But they will still make the playoffs, but they're just not going to be that good this season, as they'll barely be making the playoffs as the 7th seed. In third place, I have the Detroit Lions, and in fourth place, I have the Chicago Bears. Now, the Detroit Lions, hey, they improved from last year at least. They still didn't make the playoffs, and they probably won't will for another 50 years. And for the Bears, this is where they fire their head coach, Matt Nagy, and they completely fall apart. And when I say fall apart, I mean fall apart. Their quarterback situation, how they brought in Nick Foles, it just doesn't work, as when someone takes the starting spot, they don't excel in games. And when they replace him with the other, such as, let's say Mitchell Trubisky starts in a game. He doesn't do well, so you put in Nick Foles. What if Nick Foles doesn't do well either? Then it's just a competition of who can be the worst quarterback. I don't know. I just don't feel like it'll work out there, and their defense will take a huge step back from the past couple of years. In the NFC South, I have the Saints once again winning their division and going 13-3. Now, just because I say they're 13-3 doesn't mean I think they'll win the Super Bowl. As last year, they were so good in the regular season, and they lost in the wild card round to the Vikings. But this year, I feel like it'll be different, as their just all-around team is so good. Now, I'm not saying it's a guarantee they win the Super Bowl or even make the Super Bowl or even excel in the playoffs. But if you just look at their team for the regular season at the minimum, it's insane. They surrounded Drew Brees with weapons. Their one thing last year was that Drew Brees was like 28th in yards after the catch or yards per catch. And Emmanuel Sanders averages like 24 yards per catch, which is insane. And it'll help their offense out a lot. For the second seed, I may get a lot of hate for this, but I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers missing the playoffs. Now, you could say that they can make the playoffs just because of how much weapons they have, and their defense will improve a lot. But I just don't think Tom Brady's the guy anymore. Don't get me wrong. Tom Brady is the GOAT, the greatest player of all time, easily. But he's just washed up, and you could tell at the end of his season with the Patriots last year that he just wasn't that good anymore. And he'll still have some success because of the weapons he has, but he'll take a huge step back. Now, this may be surprising, but I have the Panthers winning 8 games. That's actually really good, and only 1 game behind the Buccaneers. I feel like Teddy Bridgewater for the Panthers is going to be insane for them. Now, not insane in the way as MVP, but insane for the way as no one's really expecting him to be that good. But he still comes out and he plays his part and he does really good for the Panthers. And Christian McCaffrey will have another insane year. And I feel like he'll win Offensive Player of the Year, but that's for another video. And I just feel like they'll find some success this year. Their defense is going to be atrocious. I know. They lost a lot of defensive assets. But their offense, I think, is going to make up for that for 8 games, which they win. Now, for last place, I have the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, ever since their Super Bowl against the Patriots, I don't really want to bring this up because I know a lot of Falcon fans have some PTSD from this. But ever since then, they've been pretty bad. I know they've made the playoffs the year after, but since then, they've been super bad. As last year, they were supposed to be tanking, and then the second they were out of the playoff race, they started winning all their games, which doesn't make any sense. And this year, I feel like it'll be the exact same, except they'll only win 5 games. But they'll still win most of their games at the end of the season, and at the beginning of the season, they'll struggle heavily. Now in the NFC East, this division's going to be pretty bad again this year. But I have the Cowboys winning it. And you could definitely make an argument for the Eagles. But I have the Cowboys winning it just because they got...
From the 25, first down. Prescott down the middle has Cooper. Another big play.
Make the playoffs, I think. Especially since the division isn't that good. And then coming in second.
Good protection. Pass is caught. Gallup.
I have them in second, but I could definitely
Gallup
see them
inside
taking
the
division.
30 to the
Especially
25.
with their 2 quarterback front. I feel like Jalen Hurts is an amazing pickup, especially that way.
Elliott gets in on the fun. Touchdown, Dallas.
Before Joe Burrow was even
Madison to a Vikings official. He said, yeah, but we really love 33.
Yes, they do. A lot of time for Prescott. Gonna launch it. Going deep down the field. And it's caught for the touchdown. Devin Smith, the speedster out of Ohio State, the former Jet.
The Giants and the Redskins both being 4 wins.
Prescott gonna keep it all. What a zone read. Look at Dak Prescott with room to roll. Prescott still going down to the 20.
All Davison's officiated the biggest game, so
3rd down and 5. Elliott is going to get the first and then some. Ezekiel Elliott all the way.
Now with the NFC West, I feel like this will be the best division in football this year and the most exciting. I feel like the Seahawks will come in first as Russell Wilson, he's trying to make a statement. He's trying to get MVP this year for the first time. He hasn't won a single MVP yet, and he's won the Super Bowl, but he hasn't won an MVP. And now in second, I have the 49ers. The 49ers, they only went 12-4 this year, which is still really good, but they took a step back just because they pretty much only have 2 wide receivers. Deebo Samuel, who's really good, and Brandon Ayuk, who I feel like will be a really good draft pick for the 49ers, but they just don't have anyone else. And they also lost DeForest Buckner and some other pieces on their team. And Jimmy G will need to step forth in order to lead the team into the playoffs. Now in third place, this could be one of the biggest things that happens in the season this year, the Cardinals. The Cardinals got one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the game of football in DeAndre Hopkins. And Kyler Murray was really good last year. And everyone was saying that he didn't deserve Rookie of the Year, but he was setting rookie records left and right. In their defense, I feel like a player that has a great chance at Defensive Player of the Year is Chandler Jones. He was one of the most underrated defensive players last year, as I believe he either got 17 sacks or 19 sacks. Both are insane either way, and also Patrick Peterson is going to be back. And their defense is Isaiah Simmons. They drafted Isaiah Simmons in the draft, who is a great draft pick. And I feel like they'll just be amazing next year. And they'll only go 12-4, but that's a big step up from last year. And finally, in last place, I have the Rams. The Rams, what can I say? Last year, they were atrocious. And this year, I don't think it's going to be any better. They lost Todd Gurley and Brandon Cooks, Brandon Cooks, he's so underrated. He was one of the best pieces on the Rams offense when they made it to the Super Bowl. And I feel like Jared Goff will have another down year, and they'll just realize that they're going to have to rebuild for the future, because right now it's just not going to work. And it's kind of sad to see that they have one of the best defensive players in the NFL, but they're going to do so poorly next season. Thank you everybody for watching, and if you want to see us predict the MVP and Rookie of the Year and other award winners and the playoffs, just leave a comment down below. For now, enjoy this sick outro and have a great rest of your day.
Crazy. Weezy produced it and Weezy F made me and she held it down so she got a Mercedes. Young Money Records, the Army, the Navy. They ran me 10,000, I threw it like Brady. The foreign is yellow like Tracy and Katie.